Admiral Jacob. Thank you very much. Admiral is going to be speaking on Iran's military capability, asymmetric warfare in which they are experts, and its efficacy, which is sometimes doubtful, but let's see.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's not very easy to be the last speaker after so many eminent scholars and students of national security and also the various scientific disciplines have spoken. So it comes to me to give the last talk for this evening. My talk is on Iran's military capability, asymmetric warfare and its efficacy. I can't say I'm much of an expert on asymmetric warfare because the Indian Navy is really not, or the Indian Armed Forces are not structured for asymmetric warfare so far. But nevertheless, when we talk about Iran, we have to explore a very complex situation fraught with interscene sub-equations. There is a historical perspective to consider, a religious one, a regional one, and more recently, the nuclear strategic issues. Add to this the specter of terrorism and, of course, the United States factor, and you would have indeed a very complex situation. Before we dive into today's topic, I would like to sort of let us have a sense of what Iran is today and how it got there. I will not cover any of the real background because I think the previous speakers have covered all of this. I will try and speak a little bit from my personal experience when I was in Iran at a very crucial stage in its history, which was from 1978 to 1982, where there was a change of regime and thereafter there was a war with Iran and Iraq, for which I was fortunate to be present. I also lived in Iran for about 3.5 years, so I did get to know the people of that great nation pretty well. I would like to say that it's a highly evolved culture. It reflects in everything they say and do. It is a culture which is very sophisticated. It really goes back thousands of years. So they are very conscious of the fact that they are inheritors of a great history. They're a little different from the rest of the Arab world, far more sophisticated, and they think through every single action that they take. I don't think you can expect any knee-jerk reactions from Iran. Any response would be well thought out, and therefore I think this is one aspect we should look at. While, yes, the Islamic angle is very much there, they are very staunchly religious, but they're also very conscious of their Persian culture and the Persian heritage. And when they talk in most forums, this comes through loud and clear. They're also very resilient and hardy people, and they are prepared to sacrifice anything for a cause and also for their pride and their self-respect. They also have a very developed economy. There's really very little dependence on other sources for basic everyday needs. In fact, this was quite clearly evident during the Iran-Iraq war and where the sanctions were there, where most goods were very scarce in Iran. But as a result of this, and since the oil was not going out, there was a great deal of emphasis placed on agriculture, fisheries, and various other issues. One did feel that they could really support the entire Gulf with the kind of produce that they could make. We lived in Iran during those times, and they had a very organized system to make sure everybody got at least the basic needs, in spite of all the sanctions. Therefore, I think even the sanctions which are in place, I think they have the capacity and are hardy enough to be able to weather this for quite some time. They also, as has been clearly brought out in the various presentations before, a very evolved scientific temper. They have excellent universities, and the people themselves are very scientifically minded and are capable of operating the highest technologically intensive weaponry. I have flown with some of their pilots. They are extraordinarily skilled and very smooth flyers. Same with all their military personnel. They're extremely well trained. They've had also the benefit of the Western influence, where most of their earlier pilots and various other soldiers were trained abroad, and universities and training establishments were set up in Iran, which were also as good. I don't know how good it is today, since I've not really kept track. However, I think from what I can see, it demonstrates that they do have a very well-trained manpower, which will also stand a great deal of punishment before they even start wilting. I'll just briefly say that about the military, because I think most of the ground forces are really not going to be too relevant in this. They have substantial military forces, around 545,000 active, 650,000 active reserve. They also have a Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is highly motivated and and really are at the cutting edge. And they also have a very highly trained Special Forces unit, which is also more than dedicated. They are ready for sacrificing anything. Weapons, they have enough weapons, total land weapons, tanks, over 1,700 tanks, APCs, towed artillery, and you name it. They have all the weaponry that is required. Air power, you could say over 1,500 aircraft, which includes fighters as well as helicopters. What will be more significant is their naval forces and their air forces, which could come to play in any of the immediate future. Total number of ships, they have 261. They have no carriers or anything, but they have 3 destroyers, 19 submarines, 5 frigates, 198 or 200 patrol craft, and very small small craft in very large numbers, which we can really not figure out. Iran tends to keep its military equipment in fair condition, ready to be deployed when necessary. This has been shown during Iran's regular naval exercises. In many cases, Iran has used drills to test its new weaponry, such as even the missiles which have been explained in such great detail by our previous speaker, especially the Ghadar medium-range ballistic missiles. After the successful test launch of one of which, Iran's Navy chief, Admiral Habibullah Sayari, stated that from then on, the Straits of Hormuz would be completely in Iran's control. Of course, this could really be taken with a pinch of salt. However, this is a statement that they made. The Ghadar 110 is a medium-range ballistic missile designed, developed, and manufactured entirely in Iran. It is an improved version of the Shahab 3 missile, and this has been clearly explained by the previous speaker, so I will not dwell on it. But it was successfully test-launched during Iran's latest Velayat-e-90 military exercises from December the 24th to 3rd of January 2012. The purpose of Iran's naval exercises are not only naval and other exercises are not only to flex its muscles in front of the world, but is also to improve its military training and proficiency and sharpen the strategy of conducting operations within its territorial waters. Iran's military has a significant share of military hardware produced by the West. Some of it, however, is more than 30 years old, which has been hard to maintain under the embargo. Iran's fleet consists of ships of US, French, British designs, and Iran's 3 largest submarines, which were supplied by Russia, are understood not have really had any major refit for 15 and are 15 years old now. But there are reports, and there are really reports of no maintenance being done. The Russian MiG-29s, Sukhoi 24s, Chinese F-4s, and F-7 jets are the basis of the Air Force. Iran is believed to have actively replacing the foreign hardware that goes out of commission with domestically produced weaponry and constantly increases its military efficiency. After the revolution, Iran found itself sorely isolated due to economic sanctions and a weapons embargo put on Iran by the United States, and so they had to rely mostly on its own domestic arms industry. The IRGC, or the Revolutionary Guard Corps, was put in charge of creating the modern Iranian military industry. Today, Iran is capable of producing a full range of weaponry from fixed-wing aircraft, helicopters, boats, and submarines, as well as radar systems and sophisticated air defense systems. Of course, quite a lot by reverse engineering and by their own technological inputs. However, the systems that the United States provides, obviously, are far more advanced than what Iran has in its inventory. Iran has focused on developing smart munitions, light attack craft, mines, and ballistic missiles to counteract other military powers. Iran has also devoted a lot of effort in developing its own missiles, as we came to clearly see from the last presentation. And the Fajr 3 and Kalaser medium-range ballistic missiles, the Fateh 110 short-range, and surface-to-surface missiles, and the Shahab 3 missile would become the backbone of Iran's strategic missile inventory. For its submarine force, Iran has developed the Hoot supercavitation torpedo, which has allegedly been reverse engineered from the Russian Squall. Iran also totally manufactures the Shaheen and Mersad air defense system, which are improved versions of the US MIM-23 Hawk system. Iran is also known to produce and operate unmanned drones, which are used to great effect for surveillance. In fact, I understand that some of these have actually kept a track of US carrier forces which were there without being detected. Iran's Air Force operates about 200 combat aircraft, some 120 transport, and over 500 helicopters. The list of bases and airports operated by Iran's military include 14 tactical Air Force bases, 18 military airfields, and 22 civil airports that we use for military purposes. Iran's air forces consist of Soviet and Chinese aircraft, as well as ex-Iraqi aircraft pressed into service. Some of the older aircraft are American, which the Air Force has been able to maintain by a certain amount of cannibalization from other aircraft and are in service. Iran is also capable of producing second-generation Azarkash and Sadek single-seat jet fighters derived from the American Northrop F-5. Iranian officials claim that the Sadek is similar to the US-built McDonnell F-18 Hornet. According to latest report, Iran has about 30 of these aircraft already in operation. All the Iranian aircraft are equipped with locally manufactured missiles and do not rely on foreign supplies. Iran's naval forces, according to open sources, Iran's naval forces have a total of around 26 submarines, 4 frigates, 3 corvettes, 24 missile patrol craft, 7 mine warfare ships, and over 270 coastal and inshore patrol craft. 3 of the Iran submarines, the Russian-built Kilo-class diesel-electric submarines, are mainly intended in the anti-shipping and anti-submarine role in the approaches to the Persian Gulf. Iran has, however, produced around 17 domestically produced Ghadir-class submarines capable of firing the Hoot supercavitating torpedoes, rocket torpedoes, which makes them a significant threat to hostile ships and submarines because of the speed of the torpedo. The Ghadir class is a midget submarine built by Iran specifically for cruising within the shallow waters of the Persian Gulf. The submarines are equipped with the latest military and technological equipment, and its capabilities are believed to be equal to similar submarines of their class. The Ghadir class submarines are capable of firing the Hoot supercavitating torpedoes. They are also to be used for deploying divers and special operations such as laying mines. Considering that the Strait of Hormuz is quite shallow and only two narrow navigational channels, it would not be such a challenge to block the strategic pass, especially with Iran's experience in mine-laying operations. Mine-laying operations can be carried out quite covertly, blocking the Straits of Hormuz, besides which Iran is capable of striking tankers and other vessels within the straits with anti-ship missiles set up on speedboats or directly from the shore. The main concern of the West is Iran's ballistic missile and nuclear programs. Iran has created armed ballistic missile forces that are capable of striking at any US allies and US bases in the region. It is claimed that Iran has accumulated several thousand short and medium range mobile missiles. Iran's ballistic missiles could also be configured to carry nuclear warheads if Iran can develop them. Iran still claims that its nuclear program is peaceful, but many in the world community believe that it is aimed at producing nuclear weapons. According to military gurus such as Anthony Kordsman of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, it is quite possible that Iran may acquire deliverable nuclear weapons within the next 5 years. Igor Korchenko, another military analyst, believes that Iran would use its ballistic might without hesitation if required. The only question that remains is how effectively this would work from the engineering side. Iran's Shahab-3 missiles and newer missiles based on that technology are in fact semi-strategic missiles. It is possible to attack American military facilities in the region with these missiles to a certain extent. The question is how effectively Iran will use its missile units. Missile units are controlled by the Revolutionary Guards and included in their operational framework. Thus, we can expect that at least the control of the moral readiness, Iran's missile men will carry out their professional duty. The opposition. In real terms, there is actually no limit to the opposing forces. It just depends on how much support for an all-out offensive the US can muster. As it is, the US alone maintains 2 carrier groups in the Gulf/North Arabian Sea. In addition, it has bases in Qatar and UAE. Israel can also be used for strategic logistic support. As Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta said, the US naval and military presence in the region will not change, and the current level is sufficient to deal with any situation that could arise. Panetta also said recently, we have a Navy fleet located there. We have a military presence in that region, and we have continually maintained a strong presence in the region to make it very clear that we are going to do everything possible to secure the peace in that part of the world. It is therefore obvious that Iran would not like to engage in a conventional war and has therefore evolved the strategy of asymmetric warfare to ensure that the balance of exchange is such that the superior power would tread very carefully before commencing an all-out offensive. Just to give a little background on the development of this kind of warfare in Iran, revolutionary Shiite values such as stoic endurance, devotion to the cause are granted equal, if not superior status, through the traditional military principles of military accomplishment and the achievement of a military objective. According to this doctrine, the mere act of fighting, exerting maximum effort, and fulfilling one's religious, in brackets I would say also national, duty to the fullest is an end in itself. The result or outcome is of secondary importance. For adherents, martyrdom is a welcome prospect. A readiness to die, however, is not considered a substitute for lethality and effectiveness. On the contrary, the Iranian concept of Alawi Ashurai warfare, which relies not just on spiritual commitment, but also on high-tech weaponry and innovative tactics, a combination employed to great effect on the ground in southern Lebanon by Iran's protege, the Lebanese Shiite Hezbollah, in its war with Israel last summer is an indicator. The most prominent expression of the doctrines was a series of naval battles with the US Navy in 1988. These took place during the final phases of the Iran-Iraq War, when hopelessly outclassed Iranian forces battled US naval units in the Persian Gulf. Iran incurred heavy losses in the process. The experience taught Iran that large vessels, naval vessels, are vulnerable to air and missile attacks. confirmed the efficacy of small boat operations and spurred interest in missile-armed fast attack craft. It also allowed Iran to expand the use of swarming tactics to form the foundation of its current approach to asymmetric naval warfare. Swarming tactics are not new. They have been practiced by land armies for thousands of years. Such tactics require light, mobile forces with substantial striking power, capable of rapidly concentrating to attack an enemy from multiple directions and then rapidly dispersing. Iranian naval swarming tactics focus on surprising and isolating the enemy's forces and preventing their reinforcement or resupply, thereby shattering the enemy's morale and the will to fight. Iran has practiced both mass and dispersed swarming tactics. The former employs mass formations of hundreds of lightly armed and agile boats that set off from different bases, then converge from different directions to attack a target or group of targets. The latter uses a small number of highly agile missile or torpedo attack craft that set off on their own from geographically dispensed and concealed locations and then converge to attack a single target or set of targets such as a tanker convoy. The dispersed swarming tactic is much more difficult to detect and repel because the attacker never operates in mass formations. Current Iranian naval deployments are aimed at deterring an American attack and, in the event of hostilities, entrapping and destroying U.S. naval forces in the Persian Gulf, at which time U.S. regional bases would be targeted with rocket and missile strikes as well. Iranian naval forces would probably conduct simultaneous close-in standoff attacks, relying on swarming tactics developed and refined during the Iran-Iraq War and highlighted in the recent naval exercises which they have done in the Persian Gulf. The performance of Lebanese Hezbollah guerrillas who used similar tactics against a larger and more powerful Israeli ground force in southern Lebanon last summer provides a great insight into what the U.S. Navy should expect in the event of a confrontation with Iran in the Persian Gulf. I understand there was a simulation which was done in 2002 by the United States Navy where a similar situation was gamed, and I believe the game was stopped in the middle and reset because the figures that were emerging was something which created a little bit of discomfort among the U.S. forces, the U.S. command which was controlling this exercise, because the number of casualties which were inflicted on the American forces, so-called blue, by the red forces, which were the enemy, was so much that they did not want this to be, publicized. What are the factors which will determine the possible outcomes? The recent IEA talks in Tehran, while inclusive, hold optimism that Iran may give ground. The inconclusive meeting between Iran and the P5+1 group on Tehran's nuclear program, the sides were not able to reach an agreement, but that would regulate Iran's enrichment of uranium, a process necessary before the uranium can be weaponized, or allow the IEA to inspect Iran's nuclear infrastructure. This may paradoxically work to Israel's advantage, as Iran would be seen as inflexible in this regard. The pullout in Afghanistan, the forthcoming U.S. presidential election, growing resentment in the U.S. against deploying U.S. troops abroad, also to be viewed against the backdrop of no relevant WMD found in Iraq. The ability of the U.S. to garner support for a coalition offensive in the present circumstances, there may not be much support. Having examined these factors and issues involved, let us have a look at what could portend in this very volatile region. Could be a preemptive strike by the U.S. against nuclear strategic targets? Possible, but very highly unlikely. Retaliation in the form of unconventional warfare, swarming tactics, etc. would give you an unfavorable balance of exchange, and there would be considerable dissent at home in the U.S. So this is an unlikely scenario, is my view. Unilateral offensive by Iran Improbable and highly unlikely, will invite an all-out offensive by US coalition forces, will cripple Iran, and Iran will probably lose any negotiating space during talks. Preemptive strike by Israel. This is the only probability which at the moment may not be really likely, but this is something I don't think one can forecast, because given Israel's own perceived security concerns and assumed intransigence on the part of Iran during recent talks. Also, conventional retaliation by Iran is difficult. However, this is, in my view, not likely in the near future. It would be opposed by the US at this particular juncture. So what is likely to happen? With regard to the P5+1 talks, failure to reach an agreement would not be seen as a sign that the negotiations have failed completely. They are even now set to continue. As long as the window is open, military action is unlikely. What would be important to Israel was how the American position develops as the talks go on. To what extent, following a possible failure of the talks, would the Americans emphasize the military option? Washington has made it clear in recent days that they will not allow Iran to become a nuclear power, with the US Secretary of Defense warning over the weekend that a military option against Iran is ready, should it be needed. However, the US officials have also stated that first and foremost, a diplomatic solution is Washington and the rest of the international community's chief goal. In the case of Israel, however, it has been taking the lone wolf approach, and several remarks by officials hinted that a military strike was in the offing if the international community failed to act. Israel's imposed peaceful measures before I impose military ones statements have been credited with convincing the European Union to impose an import ban on Iranian oil, which is scheduled to begin tomorrow. However, after the last round of talks, such remarks have become scarce, possibly due to a series of high-level meetings between Israel and American officials on Iran. So far, it appears that the United States has been able to convince Israel, for the moment at least, allow the diplomatic process to run its course, and that no further gains can be made by talking about a strike, especially due to widely held assumption that Israel cannot carry out an effective strike alone. So for the moment, I feel that the status quo, at least till all talks, that is the IEA as well as the next round of P5+1, are seen through to its conclusion. If Iran continues to show inflexibility, the most likely course may be for Israel to launch an offensive to safeguard its own security concerns. But I think that would be a very disastrous course to follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your perspective, spelling out the Iranian psyche, the complexity of the situation, though prognostication, if any, is always dangerous in any situation, particularly with the countries like Iran, Israel, and so on and so forth. But in a seminar, we have to, as they say, put a money or put a pen where a lip is and sign on to something. So open to questions and discussion. Oh yes, I thought probably everybody thinks it's time for coffee. Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you? Yeah, you can do it from here.
Jakes, I think the biggest or most intriguing question in this is how would Iran react? Okay, there's going to be an attack on certain facilities on land, on shore. Iran would react presumably against the oil. That's the biggest threat. They've got to block the flow of oil. I don't see myself operating inside the west of Hormuz. Therefore, the place to operate would really be in the Gulf of Oman, and not in Hormuz at all. If anything has to operate in Hormuz, it would have to be the small craft for your swarming tactics, as you mentioned, or midget submarines. Although you said, and it's true that the water is shallow, I just got myself a chart from the internet, and it's 50 to plus 50 to 100 meters. So 70 meters is found fairly comfortably throughout the Straits of Hormuz, which is it's enough for submarines to operate at safe depth, even with supertankers. But there's no maneuvering space, and you have the Nensolian problem of no sea room. So presumably only midget submarines, mining, and small problems would arise in target selection. They don't know which ship to sink. It's all nationality sensitive. Whether it's an aircraft carrier coming or a tanker would have to be decided. And how exactly they'd go about imposing a blockade against whom? Because all the others, if they're not enemies, they may not be enemies, but they're not declared enemies anyway, the other Arab countries. You don't want to make them actively. So Iran really has a serious problem, and it would probably do everything to avoid a conflict, because they can't do very much about it. If they did anything, it would have to be in desperation. Not in the sense that Vijay used it, but they would be attacking, and damn the consequences.
May I just put it in perspective? The current crisis started with the November report of IAEA. Since then, all this rhetoric has been overflowing. 2-3 remarks which have come from the senior leadership of Iran. One was, if our oil doesn't flow, we will not let others' oil flow. This is officially from a podium, the statement has come. The second one is, they tried hectoring. As you know, US 5th Fleet is in Bahrain. Under normal circumstances, US has 1.5 aircraft carrier groups, which means one group outside and one group inside. But they've increased that. But when the aircraft carrier, the last one, was leaving, Revolutionary Guards, again, I thought this is quite un-Iran-like, came out with a statement where they put their back to the wall. We will not allow US to re-enter the Gulf. Now, that was a silly statement because the Americans were going to test it. So they immediately increased their carrier strength beyond the 1.5, and they streamed in. And then, of course, the talks started. So you do not take positions in public. So obviously this also indicated that the Revolutionary Guards was beginning to strain at the leash, and the senior leadership was losing control over the public rhetoric. They may not be singular in that. Let's not point fingers at ourselves. But yes, they are suffering from that. Now, Americans having gone right back in, and the Iranians having come to the negotiating table, so that seemed like just basically a hectoring from this thing. So in Iranian this thing, there's always a degree of bluster. Now, when that bluster gets translated into action, we don't know. But there will always be. I thought I'll just bring these 2 points. Please, go ahead.
I think the Iranians certainly do not want a shooting war. That's quite clear. It's not in their interest to have a shooting war. And I think they will use as much of their negotiation space as they can. But within Iran itself, there is obviously a clear division between the hardline leadership provided by Khamenei and who has the Revolutionary Guards and the Basij forces and all the such forces directly under him. And the president of Iran who is on a different take practically. In fact, he has been sidelined to a great extent. And I would say that some of these statements are made more for domestic consumption than for anything else. While the United States has used has said that they will not allow for any restriction in navigation in international waters, true, but there is a certain amount of bravado in this. When you say that swarming tactics will not work within the Persian Gulf, I am afraid that's not quite right. Even with the best of defenses having surveillance of any kind, any weapon system that I know of that is there in existence today has a saturation point, after which something will leak through. It is a question of what is the kind of trade-off that you're prepared to take. Are you prepared to trade off a 90,000-ton carrier for say half a dozen or a dozen or 24 missile boats or some submarines underneath. I also know what are the submarines that the Americans would deploy. A nuclear submarine in the restricted waters of the Persian Gulf. I mean, after all, I have sailed in the Persian Gulf. I know it's not so easy to navigate a submarine in the Persian Gulf. So I think there are risks involved in both. The Americans had to make a point because I think they felt that there was really no reason at that stage for Iran to take any kind of overt action. But let's say a scenario where, say, Israel, which I would say could be a trigger in this. Let's say Israel carries out an attack against a nuclear facility. That's when you have to see what the Iranians are ready to do. They may not, one thing about Iran, they don't think conventionally on these issues. They're certainly not going to do what you think that they will do. Why do you think that they will just go and block the Straits of Hormuz? Once something vital in their thing is hit, what is wrong in them hitting something in one of the other countries which are allies of the Americans? Will the Americans risk a complete shooting war, including launch of a complete strike against Iran on account of that? If, say, one missile is fired into one of the areas where American forces are, and you won't even know from where it has come. So I think the risks in this case are very high. I agree with you that Iran is not going to do anything to upset the apple cart. However, I think we need to take the Iranian response. One is the public bluster. Like, for instance, they have created an aircraft which is a copy of the F-5. They say it is as good as the F-18. Now, we know that that's not possible. So that has to be taken with a pinch of salt. But just going by the Russian strategy to take on a carrier task force before they got their own carriers, or if you look at an American aircraft, it is maybe 100 times more expensive than a Russian aircraft. So when we got our MiG-21s, we could buy hundreds of MiG-21s for one F-18 or one F-16. So can that one take on this entire lot? So it's a question of what is the strategy that you're going to employ, and this swarming tactics can be put into place in any area, especially by the weaker power. Nobody is saying that if America wants, they can flatten Iran. There's not a problem. Everybody knows that. But are they going to do this? Is that going to be justified? The world community, will it accept it? So I agree with this thing that quite a lot of it is bluster, but it is our business to try and read through this bluster. It's a question of what is the threshold which needs to be crossed before any kind of overt action of this sort by the Iranians.
If you have been following developments in Iran, would you like to comment on the internal situation with reference to the elections in March, Majlis elections?
Why don't we pick it up in the last speaker?
Okay.
Yeah, I think we'll position it there. That'll be much better because he will be able to answer. So, copy everyone. I think that's the next. Thank you, Edward. Thank you very much. And Professor, thank you very much. It says here from an insider living outside.
Well, it is double difficult for me because most of what I was going to say is already covered by others. But I will try to avoid and to repeat those that have been said already. And it is difficult that because being an Iranian, having that love for your own country at the same time, being a scholar at the same time, working for a TV channel, it makes it double difficult. But however, what I say here is my own words and my own mind, and I'm not representing the TV that I work for. The legal rights of Iran. In Iran, all of the people, doesn't matter which camp they belong, they think that it is their right to have this nuclear knowledge and energy. And as we know, Iran has signed NPT. And Iran claims that its nuclear program is civilian and peaceful and has legal right to enrich uranium. But saying that, the big powers are saying no, Iran shouldn't develop that knowledge and nuclear power plant even. Then they are talking of attacking Iran. But as a signatory to NPT, NPT itself doesn't prescribe preemptive military action, even if a nation is trying to achieve the military aspect of the nuclear energy. Iran somehow was managed, and it was all right under the IAEA former head, Egyptian al-Baradei. I think he was sort of managing the scenario in the international arena, avoiding the escalation of the problem. But as it is said under the Yuki Amano, the new head of the IAEA, in November 8, things got deteriorated. Then the crisis escalated when he said that there is strong indicators of possible weapon development by Iran, a vague phrase which hardly they have proof for. Then a common belief when I talk to my colleagues in Europe, all over the world, in the airport when I travel, all of them, they say, yes, why they are against Iran? If India and Pakistan simply has it, why not Iran? Which country was the one who used for the first time and last time the nuclear bomb against another nation, namely Japan, in Second World War? And even worse than that, Israel, which itself is believed to be holding between 200 to 300 warheads, which is estimated, and Tel Aviv never confirms nor denies. Now, the media is filled with one thing, attacking Iran, Israeli invasion of Iran, that it won't be the America, but the Israel which will attack Iran. To understand it, I have made two videos that whether Israeli attack will succeed and if Israel will manage to successfully carry out its mission of destroying the Iranian nuclear sites. Of course, Israel is not bordering Iran, and it makes it double difficult for Israel. The distance between Tel Aviv and Tehran is 1,600 kilometers. But Israel is determined to destroy all Iran's nuclear facilities. Under the Begin Doctrine, which says that Israel, under any cost, should prevent all hostile nations to achieve nuclear know-how, as they did with Iraq. In 1981, they attacked Osrak nuclear plant of Saddam Hussein, and within 90 seconds, they destroyed it. They did the same to Syria in 2007, and within 2 minutes, they destroyed Bashar Assad's as well, the installation of the Syrian regime's nuclear plants. But Iran insisting that it will not pull back from enriching the uranium. And then the man in the middle, President Ahmadinejad, with its own very controversial remarks, is saying that Iran will wipe out Israel from the map. According to this Masoud, Iran will be achieving the know-how how to make a bomb by the end of this year, the current year, but CIA says that Iran can make nuclear bomb by the end of 2014. Then the choices that Israel has to attack Iran and destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. One is by airstrike. Israel has pretty one of the best air force in the world, reportedly among the best 10s in the world. So one way is just airstrike, as all of you know. But in that case, Israel is estimated to lose between 20 to 30% of its air force if it is attacking Iran. To do so, Israel has three options, three routes Israeli planes can reach Iran. One is the southern route from Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. The other one directly from Oman to via Iraq. With Jordan, Israelis have the peace treaty, so it is not very probable. And then the second one comes now via, again, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. But the best option that Israelis have, it is northern route, which is through Syria, part of Turkey, and northern Iraq. So this is most probably the route that Israelis are going to take in order to destroy Iranian facilities. But saying it is easy than done. In order to carry the mission, they need to blind the radar of the Syrians and possibly the Turks as well. They have the facilities for it, and they can do that as they did when they were attacking the nuclear plants of Syria. They do that with Gulfstream G550, which is especially designed to blind the enemy's radar. Then, after blinding the radar, they are supposed to carry their mission with F-15 and F-16 fighters. But Iran will not be an easy target. Iran already has anti-aircraft facilities, which widely discussed. I'm not going to pause much on it here. Iran has British-made, then French-made missiles, and even the one in the middle, Stingers, which reportedly Iran has obtained from black market from Afghanistan. Then Iran has its own air force, not among the top best in the world, but one with 158 fighters. Iran can also, if not destroy definitely, but pose a serious threat to the Israelis' mission. Then Iran has obtained this missile as well, SA. Russians, they didn't deliver Iran the S-300 missiles, but Iran has this one, which reportedly is adding a lot to Iran's ability to defend itself before the Israeli attack, airstrike. Then the second option is missile. Israelis are holding Jericho-3 missiles, which easily brings Tehran into its target. But that is also very not precise to carry out, because what I have understood, they say that the error that these missiles have, it is not just a matter of meters. Sometimes it can be kilometers, so they need to be precise. Then to counterattack, Iran has spread all facilities all over the Iran, which makes it really difficult for Israelis to destroy oil. But if Israelis are, let's say, focusing on 4 major sites, which Isfahan, then the most controversial one, Natanz, then Iraq, and then the fourth one, Bushehr, again, it won't be that easy option for them. The best method that they have is using the bunker buster missiles or bombs that they have obtained 600 pieces of it from USA. But again, to counterattack, what the Iranians they have done is they have taken their facilities, especially in Natanz, where they are enriching uranium, about, some reports they say 36 meters under the ground, and some reports they are saying that about 80 meters under the ground. And then they have made several layers of beton, each wall about 2.5 meters wide, several layers, and then which makes it not easy target. Then, as I said before, it is this bunker buster, 600 pieces of it, USA has provided to Israel, which is able to blast 6 meter wide beton under the ground, 13 meter or 36 meter under the ground. But then the danger is that again, here they must be very precise, just exactly to target the exact place. And if they, in case of attacking the power plants, the one which is operating, the Bushehr one, then the human loss will be immense. Thousands of people can perish in Iran as well as in Persian Gulf Arab states. To counterattack, Iran has also its own cards. Iran can respond. Iran will not be an idle actor and player. Iran, as widely discussed, has its own missiles, namely Shahab. And as Mr. Ambassador Singh said, I think it is Iran's right to develop it. You mentioned, sir, the Iran-Iraq war, during which I remember I was accompanying my sister from my hometown to Tehran as a teenager. And you mentioned the panic. Yes, even remembering it now, it is terrifying me. You see that the West is providing all type of the missiles to Saddam Hussein, and Iran virtually had nothing. So you could see the missile is coming with that horrible sound, and you couldn't expect that any moment it could fall down, and then that fear was killing. So Iran, after Iran-Iraq war, developed this missile technology, and I think, personally, I think it is really justified for Iran to develop it for its own security. And then that is the main Iranian threat. Iranians, the Iranian government never said that they will use chemical weapons. But again, during the 8 years war with Iraq, they got hit several times, many times indeed, by the Saddam Hussein chemical weapons. Though the Iranians, they have never claimed, but unofficially somehow it has been said that Iran will target the Tel Aviv with chemical weapons. Tel Aviv is the capital of Israel, is the place that reportedly 70% of the population are concentrated, and 80% of the Israeli infrastructures. And then to counterattack, Israel has very good defense system, which they call it the radar system, which they call it the Iron Dome, initially made to combat the rockets that Hezbollah was firing from South Lebanon. And then Iran's second missile base is not in Iran itself, but in southern Lebanon, Hezbollah, which I will come later on that later on in my presentation. So attacking Iran is not an easier of what they claim, that when the Israelis are saying to the US that, okay, go aside, we will carry out the mission, we will destroy all Iranians' facilities. I think it won't be that easy. Then the recent one, the most of the ace card that Iran has is Hormuz Strait, as all of you mentioned, almost all the speakers, that Iran is threatening to close the Hormuz Strait. And now all the escalation of the threat is somehow circling and hovering around the Hormuz Strait and energy, of course, parallel to the nuclear issue. Now let me go back to my PowerPoint. This we covered, Iran response. Now, President Barack Obama said in November 21 that the actions and policies of the government of Iran threatens the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. Then almost a month later, Iran launched 10 days naval Velayat-e-Navad military exercise in the Persian Gulf. Then the threat came, as you mentioned, Admiral Habibullah Sayyari, who said that blocking the Hormuz Strait will be easier than drinking a glass of water. Of course, a very rhetoric phrase. Then the strongest one came from Vice President Rahimi, the man in the right, who said that if they impose sanctions, Iran's oil exports, then even one drop of oil cannot follow from the Strait of Hormuz. Then still Iran's army being in exercise, the United States and allies, they put the knife on the artery of Iran. sanctioning the oil export, and then they're blocking the financial circulation of Iran's finance deals with the foreigners. Oh, I made a mistake, I guess. But when it comes for Persian Gulf, Hormuz Strait, it is not something new. What's known as Carter doctrine, when he says, let our position be absolutely clear, an attempt by any outsider to gain control of the Persian Gulf region and thereby endangering the flow of oil will be regarded as an assault on the vital interest of the United States of America, and such assault will be repelled by any means necessary, including military force. Then 3 decades later, the highest man in his administration, President Obama's administration, Mr. Dempsey, repeating the same, but at the same time says that, yes, Iranians indeed can block this strait. And then former head of CIA and present Defense Secretary, Leon Panetta, repeating the same, says that the United States would not tolerate Iran's closing of this strait. Now, there aren't less people who are looking at a whole scenario as the fight for energy. America is already not only in the Persian Gulf, but also in the Caspian Sea region, which is very rich in energy. But then Iran says that it will close the Hormuz Strait, a strait which is the most important strait in the world, and almost 17% of the world daily oil is passing through. If there are 6 most strategic straits in the world, namely Malacca, Bosphorus, Suez, Bab el-Mandab, and Panama, Hormuz is the most important of all. As I said, 17% of the world oil is passing through. Now, if Iran is blocking that, Iran is shooting on its feet first, and then the others. And then Europeans also, to my mind, will be the losers, who are receiving about 18% of Iran's oil. And which country are the most vulnerable? Of course, those 3 that I have highlighted in red: Italy, Spain, and Greece. Those who are in severe economical crisis right now. With Italy importing 7% of Iran's oil, Spain 6%, and interestingly, when it comes for UK, France, and Germany, the big powers of Europe, combined all are not importing more than 4% of Iran's oil. Then the economical situation in Europe, which to me is one of the main factors that it is indeed making the war less probable. That already Ireland is gone. Ireland has already economically in terrible situation, gone, and it is the best time, I think, if you want to invest there for property. Very in bad shape. Then Portugal, the same story. Then Spain and Greece. And in case of Italy, for example, they say that if Italy is coming down, it will bring down the entire EU. Though they say that it is too big to fall, but at the same time it is too big to be saved. So if Italy is going to have the Greece fate, then it will be much more worse for EU. Greece already, this current year, is having 351 billion euro debt. In fact, it is threatening the entire existence of the EU. Then the Saudis are saying that, okay, if Iranian oil is not there, we will just open one tab and then it is done. Then we will compensate the loss of the Iranian oil. But then the question is that if the tension is escalating and if the Hormuz is getting closed down, even for a short time, Saudi Arabia is not in the position to compensate the shortage of the oil, at least when it comes for Europe. The simple reason for that is they don't have any pipeline. The major Saudi oil is exported via Hormuz Strait. And the only pipeline that they have which goes through another strategic strait, Bab el-Mandab. Its capacity is 5 million barrels per day. And if it is running even with full capacity, it won't be able to compensate the oil export only to Europe, if not other parts of the world. Then coming back to the war, the threats, the rhetorics. Two main cards that USA and Israel have, their ace cards are, first, number one, intelligence and military superiority. Nobody questions that. Second is the superiority in technology, finance, and international organization, and in lobbying. Definitely, Iran is no match to confront USA, Israel, and their allies in these areas. Just to give some examples, the blast that happened close to Tehran some time ago, and then they said that Masoud was behind. And in this mission, one of the main missile men of Iran, General Tehrani Muqaddam, Brigade General, he got killed. And then the reports came out that Masoud was behind. Then, till today, 4 Iranian scientists, nuclear scientists, have been assassinated. Again, they say that it is Masoud. It came to your country as well, to New Delhi and Thailand. Then the cyber war that someone reflected, the Stuxnet worm invaded the Bushehr nuclear plant, and then the most recent one, virus, attacked Iran's oil ministry. Then, of course, in the international organizations, also they have the upper hand. But the main Iran's failure, when it comes for the natural sources of power, Iran is blessed because of its geography, which it gives Iran a geostrategic position, and then because of the natural resources. I wonder if Iran hadn't these two sources of power, what Iran really could and what Iran today had to say. But when it comes for that, I have highlighted as red. When it comes for the natural sources of the power, the national image that Iran is giving, Iran definitely is laying behind. And then the public support that Iran can gain both inside and outside the country, it is really questionable. To analyze it, I have made it in 4 levels: Iran itself, and then Iran's neighbor, Arab Spring, which somehow Ambassador Singh very shortly he just referred to, which is not covered much in the media even, and then the external players, the big powers. Iran's ace cards. I'm just not getting into detail, already we discussed it a lot. Then one card that Iran has, and this one also is not widely discussed, is that in case of invading Iran, Iran has...
Sorry, you might like to go back to that because there may be something different.
It's something, because already missile, it's widely covered. Just what I said in the beginning, the capability that Iran out of necessity had to obtain, varieties of missiles. You can go to the next one, sir. And then another card that Iran has, and this one also is not widely discussed. If Iran is invaded, doesn't matter if by air or by missile. If Iran is going to lose all its infrastructures, Iran has also this card to play, and this is the last option, I guess, for Iran. And that is to target the oil export hubs, both in Persian Gulf and even in Caucasus, though it is very less probable, but on the excuse that America has bases there. If they really threatened Iran's existence, I think Iran can play this card as well and target at least 4 out of 6 choke points. When it comes for military, as again it was covered, and I will not pause much here, Iran has 3 Kilo-class submarines, Russian-made. And then briefly, one of the speakers pointed to those small submarines. In Iran, they call it Nahang, which means whale, very small. It can carry 4 to 4 torpedoes, and missile as well, and apparently ideal to maneuver in the shallow waters of Hormuz Strait, while the big submarines cannot. The numbers, we don't know. Then Iran claims that it can drone 2 tankers and block the 54-kilometer wide Hormuz Strait. Reportedly, it is not that much practical. Then the main threat, one of the main threats, is laying mines. Reportedly, Iran has 5,000 of them and different and varieties of them, which is the major threat. Fast boat already, it was discussed. And then the last one of the last choices that Iran has is human torpedo, just as a last resort to attack the enemy's targets and navies by kamikaze, by suiciding. Besides this military, Iran has 2 floating navies, I call it, in the Middle East, namely Hamas in Gaza, in Palestine, and Ismail Haniyeh, the leader, which recently has distanced itself from Iran, apparently to gain the Qataris' petrodollars. However, its junior ranks are saying that they will not leave Iran aside alone if Israelis are going to attack Iran. But the legality of Hezbollah in South Lebanon, Hassan Nasrallah, it's not questionable. As when in 2006, when Israeli attacked South Lebanon, it was Iran which rebuilt again the destroyed regions. War on terror, Afghanistan. Iran has 2 cores of Afghanistan and Iraq as well. USA ousted 2 major immediate Sunni enemies of Iran, Iraq Saddam Hussein and Afghanistan Taliban. USA destroyed these 2 anti-Iranian, but became at the same time the immediate neighbor of Iran. We know that the bomb blasts are the order of the day in Kabul and Baghdad, so these 2 countries are not stable yet. In December 2001, after 9 years' war, USA pulled out its troops. And then it is doing the same in Afghanistan. By 2014, all the US troops are supposed to leave Afghanistan. So the outcome of almost a decade war on terror, 225,000 lives have been lost, and then the cost of the war, $4 trillion. Now the question is that, really, in reality, are American taxpayers are ready to pay for another war? Personally, I think not. When it comes for Afghanistan, it's true that Osama bin Laden is no more. And here I would like to say that Iran's positive rules here, it's hardly been debated again in this part, that Iran is acting as a buffer zone between Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the rest of the world. Nowhere this positive side of Iran has been mentioned. Maybe it is not a choice for Iran to do so, but being as a sworn enemies of Wahhabis and Sunni elements of Pakistan and Afghanistan, Iran is indeed preventing the on-land expansion of terrorism to the rest of the world. And hardly you can find it in the media, stressing upon this positive fact. But then, as someone mentioned again, since the enemy of my enemy could be my friend, then Iran can tie in rainy days with Taliban and Al-Qaeda even. And if its existence is questioned. So Iran has these 2 cards of Iraq and Afghanistan. In Iraq, at present scenario, present time, the things are going in Iran's favor. Nouri al-Maliki, the prime minister, the Shiite prime minister of Iraq, he has nothing against Iran. In fact, his government is closing down the Mujahideen-e-Khalq camp in Iraq. That is the sole opposition group to Iranian regime which is armed. Now, Iraqi government is closing down the camp and very much cooperating with Iran. Worse than al-Maliki, the man below with the scary face, is Sadr. I'm sure you have seen on the news and media. He is heading the Mahdi militia. It's just attached to capital of Iraq, Baghdad, the Sadr city. And when they were celebrating in the American troops' departure from Iraq, Sadr, via the video and internet, addressed his own followers in Sadr cities from Iran. He was, and he is now in Qom, living in Iran. Several times his Mahdi militia, they have fought with American troops. And if needed, I think Iran has the ability again to, gain their support and use them against the American targets. Then Arab Spring. I hardly believe that without Arab Spring being commenced, Iran's navy could cross the Suez Channel for the first time after the revolution. And when Mubarak was gone, Iran's navy crossed the Suez Canal. By saying this, I would like to say that among 6 recently revolted Arab countries of Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, Syria, Yemen, and Bahrain, Islamic parties are gaining ground, at least in 3 of them. And that is, fortunately or unfortunately, is the reality, and I interpret it for the short-term interest of Iran. So geopolitical changes in the Arab world and Arab Spring is in Iranian interest. In Tunisia, for example, where all started, and Zain al-Abidin Ben Ali, after 23 years, fled to Saudi Arabia. Now, Islamic Party of Al-Nahdha won the parliamentary election. Then the president of Tunisia, who was when he was young, he traveled to India. He was interested to discover the Gandhiji's peaceful nature. He says that he says that he's supporting the Iranian nuclear peaceful energy plans and programs, while the head of Al-Nahdha party saying that I am not another Khomeini, but definitely Islamic parties are much more closer, or will be more closer to Iranian regime than to the USA and allies. Then in Morocco, it is the same. The Justice and Development Party, which is the softer version of Ikhwanul Muslimin, they also won the election. They are copying Turkey, apparently very moderate Islamists, but they are also winning the ground. And for the first time in the history of Morocco, now the prime minister is from this party. Egypt, the same story. The final result will come out in June 21st. So if Mohammed Morsi from Ikhwanul Muslimin is emerging as the president of the new Egypt, don't surprise. It is the same scenario in Libya. The man who led the rebellion, the Abdul Hakim Belhaj, he's the man now in charge of the security of Tripoli. And he's suing the British government, the government of Blair. Under his government, Belhaj of Libya is suing Jacques Rowe, saying that they delivered him to Gaddafi and Gaddafi tortured him. By saying this, I want to say that in Libya also, the Islamists are gaining ground, with the exception of Syria. The Syrian development is not in the interest of Iran. In Bahrain, at the other side of Hormuz Strait, the development, if Iran wants really, can discard either. The card of Al-Wefaq Shiite, which are based in Al-Wefaq Party. That is the only organized party and opposition to Al Hamad dynasty. In Yemen, in northern Yemen, Houthis, they are Shiite, and reportedly Iran is arming them. So if Iran is willing, can use that card as well. And you know that the 5th Fleet Navies of USA is stationed in Bahrain. So the bottom line of all I said on Arab Spring, to my mind, is in favor of Iran. Then the balance of the power in the international arena. China and Russia, we know that they are opposing the new sanctions against Iran. The collapses of the USSR and emergence of China, and of course India, has already defined the new multipolar world order. Russians have already lost Iraq, Libya, and are losing Syria also. It is less probable that they will accompany the Americans' agenda, as Iran's and Russian interest is to block the USA and NATO's advancement in the region, whether it is in Central Asia or in the Persian Gulf. Because of the geopolitical calculation, Beijing, Tehran, and Moscow have come closer to each other, unlike of any time. They are apparently and reportedly are helping Iran to develop its nuclear and missile technology. Then, of course, the energy issue. We know that the Chinese are importing a lot of their oil from the Persian Gulf countries. About 50% of Chinese oil comes from the Middle East, while 22% is coming from Asia, from Africa. So it is very less probable that Chinese at the end, despite the fact that they are reducing their oil import from Iran, to my mind, it is very less probable that at the end they will cut all their oil import from Iran. And the most important of all, I think China as a strategic competitor to USA, sooner or later will have no option but to develop and to follow a new comprehensive doctrine to confront the USA's advancement in the region. I have put it as a question. Till today, as yesterday we were discussing, I don't understand, or as far as I know, I would like Ambassador Singh, if can comment on that, that if India has any particular doctrine toward the region, toward the Central Asia. So far as I am digging, I am finding nothing that comprehensive whether what is the stance of India vis-à-vis Iran, vis-à-vis Central Asia. While Chinese are taking the oil from the Persian Gulf or from Caspian Sea, what India is doing. The only pipeline on the table, IPI, it is, I guess, if I'm not mistaken, for more than 2 decades, but it's still unknown. So the bottom line of the recent developments, India is saying unofficially that we are reducing the oil import from Iran. Officially, as far as I know, no statement has been issued, but that is the reality, that India is somehow trying to maintain the balance, reduce a bit of oil import from Iran, at the same time be positive toward the Hillary Clinton, the USA pressure, and somehow maintain the balance. But what is the clear cut of Indian stance? Honestly speaking, till today I have not understood. Well, but does it affect really the bilateral relation if India is somehow behaving vague or trying to satisfy both sides? India twice has voted against Iran in IAEA, 2005 and 2009. But to my mind, it is not distancing two nations. And it is the case when it comes for Indian military and diplomatic ties with the West, with the Israel. India launched the Israeli spy satellite in 2008. But that also, to my mind, is not affecting the relationships. When it comes for people, Iranians' historical memory has always viewed India as a peaceful and friendly nation. It was there, and it will be there. Iranian regime and people would continue to perceive India as a friendly country because of the culture, history that we all know. Why? Especially when it comes for Iranian regime that cannot pull out from negotiation table or to challenge India much. Very simple. Because Iran has no reliable friend, big friend, powerful friend in the international arena. Look at Iran's friend. Who is at the Iranian side? Chinese? Maybe. Russians? Let me tell you that the Iranians, they don't have trust at all on Russians. They think that Russians can betray them any moment because of the history, because of the Caspian Sea, because they are utilizing their power to get more of the Caspian Sea and this historical background, and also Iranians are not trusting Russians at all. But India could be a great friend of Iran. But so far till today, we have not seen a big development in this regard between two countries. On the other hand, through that, India needs Iran oil, but very much Iran needs India's refined oil. If I am wrong, please one of you correct me. I think India is the second exporter of refined oil to Iran. So it is a very crucial fact. Tehran will not and cannot distance itself from New Delhi. As I said, because Iran has very less powerful and influential friends. Consequently, and despite Iranian rhetoric, Tehran will not move away from New Delhi. And when it comes for IPI pipeline, let me assure you, it will be the same case. Iran will not move from the negotiation table. If one day it is happening, it is, as I said, this is, I think, for 2 decades that it is prolonging and prolonging. Conclusion. Even a military successful attack from Israel's point of view will only delay Iran's nuclear program for a few years. To eliminate all Iranian nuclear elements, USA and allies must launch massive air or land strikes. Again, a full-scale war and total destruction of Iran is in the interest of no one, even Israel. It would be fanning the flame in the Middle East. But what if it happens? As NATO attacked Serbia and Serbian forces in Kosovo, and the USA and its allies invaded Iraq, but both examples lacked UN Security Council approval. Thus, if Israel attacks Iran, not only the world here, the West, won't condemn Israel, but also USA will be definitely dragged into the war to support Israel against its war with Iran. Considering the present world order and financial crisis, Iran's internal politics, Middle East geopolitics, and Arab Spring, as well as Iran, Israel, USA military and non-military ace cards, the war against Iran is not probable. Only non-state, uncalculated, and unexpected irrational moves and decisions of a group or individuals would trigger the war, like Bush administration and invasion of Iraq, when they prepared the public before launching their invasion. In case of a military confrontation in the Middle East, which is unstable than ever, if the West, which is in bad fiscal time, wage a war against Iran, it would hurt its economy first. In return, if Iran responds to military strikes of the West too little, it would lose face. And if it responds too much, Iran would lose head. There is no alternative ready to install regime in Iran, even if the current regime is ousted. In the eve of regime destruction, vengeful, armed and resourceful groups would remain scattered all over Iran, who would tie, as I mentioned earlier, with any anti-Western groups such as extremist elements of Pakistan and Afghanistan against the common enemy, USA. Presently and pragmatically, to my mind, war is in the interest of none of the players. However, I would like to draw your attention to the last part. Regarding this part and then the last part. Regarding Baghdad nuclear summit of 5+1, the negotiations with Iran, it is more likely, this time I say it more positive, that smart sanctions and compromise, the combination of both would work and would solve Iran's controversial nuclear crisis. On nuclear crisis, Iranians are united. Let me tell you here that whether inside Iran, they are nationalists, they are modern, call them westernized, Armenians, Jews, Muslims, all that are leaving Iran. When it comes for the nuclear issue, they are all united. And any attack on Iran, I think, will rather unite different segments with different views within the Iran. Those who are even opposing the regime, at this point, I think they will not stay idle, and probably they will support Iran and even will go to war if it is happening. So as I said, any attack on Iran would silence the Iranian reformists, as the regime, with the excuse of national security and combating the enemy's regime change policy, will suppress the reformists more than ever. I'm sure Europe and America is not wanting this scenario. They don't want definitely to kill all the reformists in Iran. But what is threatening Iran, this one I wanted to draw your attention. What is threatening Iranian regime the most is not Israeli or USA missiles and their short-term threats, but its own internal politics and people in the long run. It is more probable that Iranian regime via compromise would succeed on its nuclear negotiations, escaping the war. But in the long run, and without commencing reforms, the regime would gradually commit suicide at home. Thank you.
That you attack Iran on that issue, then you strengthen the regime, and the people play into the regime's hands. That is the dilemma. Whereas, do you allow, actually, even before Arab Spring, it was really in 2009 that the Green Party had started the thing, even before Arab Spring. Tunisia comes after that. Second is NPT. This argument was always made, and I always, even in public, disputed it, to make a distinction that, please, your case is not the same as India's. We did not sign the NPT. Now, to say that, no, that was signed by Shah is not a good enough argument legally, because it's an inheritor regime, and you're bound by all the obligations which were undertaken, whereas India never undertook those obligations. So the cases are quite different. And that, but in public domain, very often it overlaps, and a lot of Iranian public anger over the issue that why is India being treated differently, though it may not be voiced that loudly. One point on the attack, 2 points you didn't add. One is that at the moment, Iraqi airspace is uncontrolled. They really have no control of the space. So they can just literally fly over Iraq or hover over Iraq, because Iraq doesn't have an air force. Second is that there are reports that the Iranians have been reaching out very strongly to Azerbaijan. They're very close to the father-son regime there, which is authoritarian. And they say that they've probably been handed over one of the abandoned Russian Soviet-era airfields. There are reports about it. So whether to attack or for any plane that is hit to go and land there. Now whether Azerbaijan would irritate Iran to play this thing, I don't know. But they have definitely a run of that country. And Azerbaijan in the Caucasus is just above Iran. Third point is Arab Spring. I would beg to disagree with you because we don't know how Arab Spring is going to play out. The money in Libya, which Qatar and Saudi Arabians have pumped in, has gone to the Wahhabis and the Salafis, and I don't think they'll be very friendly towards Iran. Similarly, in Syria, the money is going to similar elements, and that's part of the problem that other countries like Turkey have, and that's why they are still waiting to see the outcome in Libya before forcibly going after Assad. So we don't know where Arab Spring will go. But yes, temporarily, at least the regime in Egypt allowed you to go through the canal. Yeah, that is there. Taliban, in the short run, yes. I think not only in the future, but Iran has been working with Taliban. The latest book on Bin Laden, which I'm just in the process of reviewing, gives very concrete thing that Bin Laden's family fled to Iran, including the number 3 in Al-Qaeda. They were under house arrest in Iran. And some of them were allowed to operate and even conduct an operation in Saudi Arabia over the telephone. This is the allegation there. So Iran always tactically would work with all those who share an enemy, but in the long run, there may be a difference that emerges. Once Americans are out of Afghanistan, we don't know whether this may be a permanent thing or it's only a temporary arrangement. I'll leave it at that.
Just if I may, sir, I couldn't remember all your points, and they are very controversial, but 3 of them I noted. I would like a short comment on them. On Taliban, I will start from the last to the first. 3 points I want to make. On the Taliban, yes, you are right. His daughter and one of his wife, I believe, they were in Iran. But fundamentally, you know the differences between the two, the Shiite Iran and then the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia and Taliban or Al-Qaeda. Imagine today I am here, but tomorrow if I am in Kabul for a same conference, just getting detected as a Shiite Iranian, I'm in danger. So that much is the enmity between two camps. Look at in Mazar-e-Sharif, they killed all the Iranian diplomats. But yes, I do agree with you. I think temporarily Iran is wisely and pragmatically is playing that card as well. You are right. On the Arab Spring, no, sir. I think I disagree with you. In the long run, yes, again, I think you are right. We don't know which direction it is going. And what media, Al Jazeera and others channels, including my TV, Euronews, is, if I can say it here, I hope it will remain here, we are not much covering, is again these Islamists which are emerging. We are just, covering the election. Yes, this party won, that party won, that's it. We are not going into the detail. In the long run, I think it is not in the favor of Iran. In the short run, it is in the favor of Iran. Why? Because I think what Iran went through 32 years ago, now the Arab countries are going through now. In 79, when we made revolution, you mentioned, sir, the Mossadegh and all. Iran is the only country in the Middle East for the first time went for constitution. At least 2 major revolution in the 21st century, but the result, the outcome. In 79, when people made revolution, it was for good. To have freedom of expression so that all parties can participate. Blah, blah, blah. But what happened after they hijacked the revolution? What is today? What about today? Today, only it is ruled by single party, and it turned to be only the Islamic Republic of Iran, Islamic. So I think in the short time, what is happening in the Arab world, despite the Salafid and all, but Ikhwanul Muslimin, the party which is, yes, I think there will be at ease with Iran than with the West. That is what I believe. In Iraq, just on the airspace, you mentioned, I think, yes, you are right again, but Americans will not let the Iraqis to open their, because still Americans are there. They will not let the Israeli fighters to cross over the Iraq airspace, because at the present, USA is the biggest state which is holding, I think, the Israel back.
I have two questions. One is you mentioned about 4 possible sites which Israel might attack. I think you left out the new enrichment site, Qom, Fordo near Qom. Now, I believe it is in a mountainous region. It's a tunnel inside the mountain. How well protected is it by natural formations? The second question is, however remote it may be, to think the unthinkable, should we exclude the possibility that Iran provides a path for the US forces to exit Afghanistan? And would that be actually in the interest of Iran if the US forces exit Afghanistan?
You want me to comment on that? Yes, and close to Tehran, there is not the one in Qom, the recent one, which uranium enrichment is reported, is called Fordo. It is the new one which is joining the others. But there are so many, and with the less transparent that information that we have from Iran, I think it is difficult to judge on the level of importance of this nuclear site. But the one that you're asking, yes, it is, I think, Fordo, close to Tehran. On the second one, that whether if American troops are leaving Afghanistan, whether it will be in Iran's favor or it will be...
Would Iran allow it? And if it does, would it be in Iran's interest to see Afghanistan being free of American forces?
Yes, I think you are right. Definitely not, to my mind. As officially Iranian statements all the time, they said that the local countries should be run by the local governments, by regional governments. But at the end, the bottom line of your thought, I think I am getting it. And that is the main question for the rest of the world as well. Will Afghanistan, under Hamid Karzai, will manage to secure the country? Personally, I think no. I'm not very positive on that. And I think I agree with you. No, it won't be in Iran's interest, I guess.
Thank you. I had requested you earlier, and I was expecting some comments in your presentation you had promised on the question of Iran's intentions posed in the morning session. And you have skirted that question altogether.
Would you please repeat it again?
You see, you have so much coming out from the IAEA, let's say, leave alone the media, international media, or the Western countries, on what Iran is up to. And we would like to know what is the view. Now, you see, you have, what are we discussing? I mean, the whole problem arises out of doubts that have arisen in Iran's conduct after undertaking an obligation under the NPT. The whole thing, the basis of everything rests on that. We cannot deny that Iran gave ground for that. There may be, we all know, we understand, we are not saying everything that is being said is true or there is no game going on. So there can be a lot of opinions on how it is being played out, who is using that situation. But the fact remains that underlying all that is a whole series of circumstantial evidence. Whether the IAEA is the right body, whether they are doing it in the right manner, all those are secondary questions. I'm not holding any brief for anybody. We have some experience, all of us, in dealing with that. So we need to know as friends, when we talk amongst ourselves. If you permit me, I frankly found that part of your presentation quite rhetorical. There is no question about Iran's right to peaceful uses of nuclear energy. Even the West is proclaiming it from the rooftops. The question is whether the obligation, See, so all these things now, I think they're all between the kinds of experiments done, etc. So if without that, and in that light, I'm sorry, I must also make a comment. I can't appreciate, Iran has a lot to appreciate from the Indian position. Every statement we have tried to hold forth for Iran by saying we must allow chance for.
Well, Iran is expecting, a lot from India than the other
yes,
big powers.
But then we can't say, does India have a policy?
Yes.
This is an expression of friendship. In this situation, you have invited that trouble yourself. So anyway, I don't want to take too much time, but what would be...
On the first...
We must touch upon those things. You see, we can't...
Sir, the question that, if I understood you rightly, the first question, the dilemma in Iran, I think it is the question that not only me, but all the world is... But okay, no question, as you said, the West is also okay, you won't let the Iranians have nuclear power plant, but not the bomb. Then here the dilemma comes. Yes, international organization, justice, and all this. But when it comes for the Iranian image, the Iranian status in the international arena, that whether Iran should achieve it or not, then it is the dilemma that I have today here. It is, I think, the dilemma that whole the world is wanting to find the answer, the opposition in Iran. That, okay, from one hand you are supporting, you have your national interest by following the nuclear programs, but from the other hand, by doing so, you are arming and you are supporting a regime which is silencing its own people. So what to do? From one hand, you have the USA and allies, somehow the countries which are employing the force by not letting Iran till today, they have not approved that it is military, really, activities are going on. All is just accusation, to my mind. So till today, no evidence. But still they say that no, Iran shouldn't do that. So the dilemma, I think the question that you are posing, I wish that I had the answer. That today, standing as an Iranian here, I'm working for a Western media, having my national interest, how shall I behave? Shall I support the Iranian nuclear program? Shall I support the government? When I was a student in New Delhi, there was this speaker of Dutch parliament, and I posed the question. I was very young and naive, same things that most of the people are saying, I posed him as a question. But sir, all the people, they have it. As I said in the beginning, I repeated, USA used it only. Then he said very simple, as all of you know. He said that, listen, we know that it is Iran's right, but it is in the hand of the regime that we don't trust. I think it is the same within the Iran. I was talking to my friends, some of them who recently, they're students studying all over the Europe, and I was asking about Iran. And then they're saying that it is all mistrust when it comes even the nuclear program. That, okay, it has been said, and it has been, I guess, proved during Iran-Iraq war, that when there is external threats, all Iranians are getting together. But at the same time, I think beside the nuclear program, Iranians themselves are divided. They don't know whether on nuclear issue it is clear, but other than that, it is just two camps. It is 1.5 century that Iran is divided into two camps. The battle of the religious part, if you divide Iran into two, and let's say the reformists, and within those reformists you can include nationalists and others, is going on, even today. So the question that you're asking is the question I think that all the international community is facing, all the Iranian reformists are facing. And I honestly, I don't have the answer for it. I don't know. I think the future developments will show. But as I said, the last phrase of my presentation, I have less doubt on that. That if you suppress your own people, if you promise that you will let all parties to be free. What you're practicing in your country. When I was a student, I see this red flag, communists. Is it possible to do so in Iran? Today I'm speaking here, but tomorrow if I go to Iran, I will be really scared that, okay, in India, I talk this and that, and then even I might be depriving myself to see my parents. So we are dealing with such a regime. I call it a semi-authoritarian regime, not fully authoritarian, but semi-authoritarian, because I compare Iran with the neighboring countries. Put aside all the Central Asian neighbors in Caucasus and Central Asia, which, out of question, compare Iran with the Persian Gulf states, with all our neighbors in the Middle East. Iran at least has a degree of freedom when it comes for politics, but it is not free. And at the same time is claiming to develop, to get bigger and bigger. During Shah, we had the 5th biggest army in the world, and His Majesty wanted to make Iran again the biggest empire. And somehow and unconsciously, I think today even Ayatollahs are trying to do the same things, but not with the name of nationalism, but with the name of ideology and religion. I think unconsciously they are doing so, to have the upper hand in the region. So if I can conclude, I really don't know the answer. Just I know that the battle is going on, as I said, 1.5 century. Society is divided into two, religion versus the nationalists and, let's say, reform-minded people. I hope it was enough. If it was not, then after the break we can discuss more in detail, sir.
I think, one second. I would strongly recommend Baradai's book, which addresses the same dilemma. And the dilemma is at the heart of the NPT. That's why India didn't sign it, which is the conflict between Article 4, Article 6, your rights, obligations, where it doesn't define the possibilities of a dual-use cycle being misused. Now, also, double standards come out. Republic of Korea was found to have also conducted experiments. But then Americans and everyone said, no, but you don't say you are not, that they were not in compliance, because the critical word is not in compliance. You can use any other word under the IAEA mandate, because the minute you say the country is not in compliance, it goes to the Security Council. But if you say, no, they were in compliance, but they were not, this becomes a subjective thing, where, as he's saying, the nature of the regime comes in. India was the bad boy. And that's what Pakistan's complaint is. They said, hey, we are the same guys, we've been your old allies. But Pakistan's got a niyat, you can't. No, as a non-signatory, you can't claim the same rights as India, because India has been given a certain exception in terms of maybe realpolitik, but in terms of Indian government, in terms of predictability of Indian government's behavior, in terms of the role that India can play in the non-proliferation and disarmament field, various justifications were given. But Pakistan can't make those arguments. We always say that, make it criteria-based, it doesn't matter, even Israel can get it if they qualify, or whoever else. But within the NPT also, the problem is, you're right, it is the nature of regime you had. If the nature of regime was different, probably, because intent is coming in, it's got nothing to do with, it begins in 2003 to 5 with saying, as they put it, Americans are quoted in this book saying, not a centrifuge. They will not, no. I'm telling you what is in the book. What Baradai says that he was being told by the Americans, not a centrifuge for Iran. At that stage, all Iran was saying was, and this is the Paris Agreement, which he explains in great detail, where they said Iranians may, I don't agree with that, but what Baradai says is Iranians may have settled for R&D, which means a few centrifuges. Then the British came back and said, our program started with 14 centrifuges or something. And that's from where the weapon developed. Now when they're talking about, it's no longer R&D. Now they're saying, don't go to 20%. Now, from Iran's point of view, each time they manage to peg it higher. Now, each time the international community agrees and come back, I think we can cut a deal at 20%, but Iran has moved ahead. So they're saying, hey guys, I won't give up my 20%, I already reached it. So it's the dilemma within the thing. I don't think it's, it's multiple factors which are governing this. There's real politics, there's the nature of the regime, there is distrust, there is US being driven by Israeli fears, there are Saudi Arabia, UAE saying, how can you let them have it? So till those, and again he puts it, he says it's politics, economics and security. All factors combined. And it's a witch's brew. How do you do it? And that is what makes it complex. Sorry, I just made it up.
So before may I just defend myself? Just I need to defend myself because sir that sir, now I need to respond because I'm not against India. I hope that by no way I convey that India is not helping Iran at all. I want personally to see more and more. I have been in your country for 10 years, a decade of my life. And when in France they're asking me, where are you from? You're saying what I'm saying. First I'm saying I'm coming from India, but I'm Iranian. There even I am putting India first and Iran next. So I hope that by no way I conveyed the message that underestimate the Indian support. But that was the fact that I gave. Twice your country voted against Iran, and the doctrine that, in a way, I posed the question. Probably I was hoping that Ambassador Singh will put light upon that what is the Indian doctrine, for example, toward the Central Asia? India is needing energy. 10 years I have been here. I never understood the concrete energy policy of India. The Indian doctrine toward Central Asia, toward Iran, that was in a way more question than rhetoric, as you said. Thank you.
Just to add there, we just signed the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline MOU.
So it has been several times this...
No. This is concrete. There's a signing, whereas with Iran, it was still at the discussion stage. There was only this is because the Americans are blessing it. But the route it's going to be taking via Kandahar will possibly be the area that Taliban controls. The Americans probably feel the interest, you divide the Pakistani interest from Taliban, then maybe they'll behave. Incidentally, that's also the pipeline where Unical was bribing Benazir Bhutto to produce the same pipeline. And Zardari is supposed to have made some money that time in the 90s on the same pipeline. So the pipelines and pipe dreams and, they go.
If I may, the first point is regarding the NPT, which you mentioned in your presentation and discussion. Please note, NPT has a clause which says that in 3 months you can quit the NPT if you got the guts. If you don't complain. Second, regarding Central Asia, a question was raised by you. What's going on now? I think that one of the fruitful developments that have occurred in recent times with respect to Central Asia, and specifically Kazakhstan, is that we have been assigned lots or plots where we can go in with our teams, engineers, explore, and then there's a production sharing agreement where, the spoils can be shared. We have to go some distance further, but it takes time. Meanwhile, the Chinese are already up and running.
There is a trust deficit because if you know, Indian Oil Corporation actually signed an MOU with Iran for 5 million tons of LNG, and it was at a price higher than what we are paying to Qatar, and they said there is going to be a presidential election. After that, you'll ratify, and they reneged. In fact, the question is one of, this we raised when we were in 2008, one of the think tanks in Iran. You say, and they said, you are like our brother, what don't you do? We said, as a brother, you should have actually seen to it that this deal was through. So the question is, how do we have the trust that when we actually signed a thing on a 5 million ton, and you said that you'll go ahead, and you would have got the liquefaction technology also, because it is not something which is possible, because we would have bought a tanker, on board would have been liquefied, it would have been done.
It is the North Korean situation. The way in which the North Koreans have been treated after they have conducted 1.5 tests is very different from the way, and that really is a proper comparison from a geopolitical standpoint. No, hang on. They quit the NPT afterwards. Not they did. Yeah. How they been treated after? Now, the other question, which brings me to the scientific question. The interesting question from the Iranian point of view of the self-interest, it's quite clear that you see that carrying on with this negotiation and the difficulties that you yourself have enumerated, you feel that your national interest, apparently, is in remaining within the NPT and not following the DPRK example. Question is why? Why is it that you think that it is worth your while to pursue this in this way that you're doing with all the difficulties and with all the problems associated with it, including the humiliation that is being heaped on Iran in various different ways, you've said it, rather than going the DPRK route and hoping that you'll be treated at worst the way DPRK has been treated? Why are you not doing this?
I think, sir,
suggesting that. I'm not suggesting what they have or they don't have. I'm just saying, why is it that the Iranian regime is not doing that?
I think in the case of North Korea, if you mentioned, I think Iranians are really fearful that if they do so, they might be attacked. That is my understanding. And that will be severe. Iran, is no match before the USA and allies. I think that must be the main reason. But when it comes for remaining in NTP, I think it is not bad for Iran. Let us not forget that from the beginning, right after the revolution, Iran has been under the sanctions till today. And then they are carrying this negotiation for at least a decade. And amazingly, the regime has been brilliantly, till today, they have managed that. I think by remaining in NTP, that is my personal understanding, that Iran is also gaining somehow. 10 years ago, you were not hearing Iran in the negotiations, in the main deals. Today, Iran is sitting on the negotiation table with the big powers. And I think it is somehow bringing, that is what I believe. If I'm wrong, correct me, sir.
One second. May I just comment on that? I think it's quite different. You must see the condition of the North Korean people. You cannot allow, Iranian regime cannot take the risk of bringing its own people or exposing them to the kind of starvation level to which the people of DPRK have been reduced. There'll be a rebellion here. The regime realizes that there is a point beyond which nationalism will be put aside and the people will come out against the regime, which is not happening in DPRK because there the military is larger per capita wise and they've got the population hemmed in. Because here the traditions are different.
No, I accept that. In fact, I was supporting what you were saying, that there are a very large number of facts. No, the point was the comparison with India not being correct. I said, if at all you want to make a comparison, it would be with DPRK and not with the Indian situation. That was the point I'm making. Not saying that they were identical. Not at all. Not at all.
Yes, sir.
If there is other points, it's fine. Just to take on this point, you also mentioned a little more. See, Albarade or no Albarade, the basic scenario here, the gap, it's true what you're saying. I just want to elaborate on that because I can share this understanding. See, the NPT has no provision to enforce itself. The problem here is this. The NPT only has an obligation not to do. There is no enforcing mechanism. No, but Security Council, how does it go? 1 minute. There's a little inaccuracy in what you said. That's why I'm just clarifying. In the main, I see your point, and it is important to understand the whole thing because very often we go. The NPT has no enforcing mechanism whatsoever. even this obligation not to manufacture a nuclear weapon, how is it enforced? The NPT parties have requested the IAEA to apply safeguards. Under the IAEA, it is important to understand, the IAEA has no powers whatsoever. The IAEA is not a watchdog. It's a wrong term that has got into currency. We should avoid it. It is not a policeman. And there is a history behind it. For India, it's very important. It is thanks to Dr. Bhabha. It is very carefully negotiated. The charter of the IAEA is to promote peaceful use of nuclear energy, nothing else. If anyone, because it takes 2 minutes since you don't have anything, the objective of the IAEA, I read from Article 3, it's a short sentence. That's Article 2. Agency shall seek to accelerate and enlarge the contribution of atomic energy to peace, health and prosperity throughout the world. It shall ensure, so far as it is able, that assistance provided by it or at its request is not used in a way to further any military purpose. Period. This is the objective, nothing else. But there is provision under its functions to apply safeguards at the request of the parties concerned. It is under that proviso that the NPT, party or parties, individually seek for safeguards under the NPT. And therefore, the IAEA's powers are very limited. It can do only what is provided for under that safeguards agreement. Now, that is the problem in the case of Iran. That safeguards agreement, it's a little detailed point, bear with me, but it's important, says the NPT signatory will disclose to the IAEA which are its peaceful facilities. And the IAEA can see only them. So if it doesn't disclose all its facilities, the IAEA can do damn all. That is what happened in the case of Iran. It did not disclose all. Legally, there is no power it has. That is, one second. So that is why, in compliance with what? Listen to me, please bear me out. In compliance with what? With the safeguards agreement, not with the NPT agreement. It has no powers. 1 second, please bear me out and finish. There is a point here. The IAEA certifies year after year for every country, including Iran, only that we have not found it to be in non-compliance with its safeguards agreement. What does that safeguards agreement say? That all material placed under safeguards has not been diverted. That is all it means to say. That is why Iran has been able to get away with all this so far, despite the fact there is plenty of circumstantial evidence. But that's not IAEA's business. That is why this report has proven to be controversial, November 2011. They have gone out of the way to talk about possible military dimensions and claimed it to be a much more definitive report. But it has nothing to do with the safeguards agreement, and that is why Iran rejected it out of hand. That is why Iran has been able to do that even with the Security Council, because legally there is no power. This is the lacuna. That is why they have tried to strengthen that safeguards agreement by bringing in an additional protocol, which will authorize, if in force, the IAEA to, on its own initiative, demand to see a certain site, if the additional protocol is signed. That itself is voluntary. Now, Iran had signed it but backtracked because under pressure. So today the IAEA does not have powers to go and see those possible military sites. So this is the gap, and that is what Iran has been playing because it has the right to. Even enrichment, there is no bar, absolutely no bar under the NPT to enrich uranium, not just to 20%. You can enrich uranium for nuclear submarines, very high degree of enrichment. Under the NPT, there is no bar because it does not bar nuclear submarines. And therefore, 1 second, it is this margin that Iran is playing in the negotiations, and these people know that they have no way. Politically, they don't want it and they are demanding. But politically, they will have to give something to get Iran to agree this, because legally there is no ground. Iran knows it to the hilt, and that's what it is bargaining. And what you mentioned, it's a measure of their professional incompetence, in my view, that they tried to run this fast one. I had 12 centrifuges, 12 is too many. Now they are on 20%. Because they didn't. They thought they can cajole Iran into submission. They couldn't. Meanwhile, Iran has improved its position, and this is the trend it's happened. They think that they can do it on the strength of frightening it into submission of attacks. Legally, they have no ground. So their belief is politically we can frighten it into submission. Well, that has brought the situation to where it is. We can't say where it will take it in the future. We can debate, but this is incontrovertible. I'm sorry to take so long.
I just want to make I mean, this is really a continuation of Santi's point in a sort of reverse kind of way. In principle, any country which is a signatory to the NPT, I'm talking only in principle, can announce that it has conducted a test with U-238 without a nuclear yield and yet be in total compliance with the NPT. It can say so openly that we have conducted it, and therefore, had we continued to conduct, if we were at some stage to say they are not in violation of the NPT if they conduct a test and say so.
Sure of that? That's a possible
100%.
view.
You can, what do you mean, what makes me so sure of what? It hasn't been challenged anywhere. No. The question about the explosive yield is what I'm talking about, but that's a separate technical issue. And I don't want to get into it, but maybe I'm wrong, but that's not the point. No, I'll make several such assertions. My point, however, is this, that you can go to the limit. It's really a continuation of that. You can go to the limit and stop under that limit, and you will not be legally, in my judgment, and many others who I've been reading recently, in technical legal violation of the NPT. The other factors that Ambassador mentioned is absolutely correct. Will continue to apply.
I have a comment on that. The trend, at least in some countries, including the USA, is to go for what are called subcritical tests. You really don't have to allow the chain reaction to go peak up and go above multiplication factor of 1, but you can peak down at 0.9, 0.8, and get enough data to validate your models, assuming that you want to validate models. So it is possible, I would like to say, that with less than 1 kiloton nuclear test, you can get sufficient information, more so because our capabilities in measurement of conducting a test have improved enormously from 1945.
I just wanted to learn a little more of what Dr. Santanam said. Would that be this thing that you have to conduct a test and subcritical test would be more difficult? Is that correct to say that? It is. So
No,
Iran will have to conduct a... Not necessary to.
The point I was making was, which was contested by Saurabh, was that in my judgment, and from whatever I read, and I accept that his contestation, that if Iran were to say that we have actually publicly say that we have conducted a test which did not give a nuclear yield of any kind, and let's say he did it with U-238, for example, it would not be in violation of NPT, is my contention.
It was also part of the accusation against North Korea. They conducted one of the tests deep means underground, in an abandoned coal mine. And the yield from that was not adequately picked up. There were some which were picked up, but then I'm not too sure it's in the larger public domain yet as of now. So theoretically, you could conduct tests, being below subcritical, get enough data, assuming, as I said, that the sophistication in instrumentation is enormously way higher than 1945, number one. Number two, there's more information in the public domain about reactor physics and reactor dynamics, and if you have put together a bright group of young persons, allow them to slog it, they can design.
Main has abandoned the rostrum because he realizes the discussion. You see, I always tell foreign ambassadors will call 5-6 Indians to a lunch whenever some middle-level functionary comes from somewhere. And I always joke, I said, you get 2 Indians, you get 5 points of view. You get 5 Indians, you don't need anyone else to talk because that guest there can get about 20 different points of view and go away. We're naturally argumentative, but so are Iranians for that matter. I think it's the same cultural tradition. So unless there's some other new issue, I think we are well on our time to finish early, but Professor Ramurthy has very kindly agreed that tomorrow we will start at 10 rather than 10:30. So that those who are leaving in the afternoon can probably sign off 30 minutes earlier rather than into the lunch. So if it's okay with everyone, we can start at 10 rather than 10:30 and hopefully finish before lunch and then decide those who want to stay on, etc. Yeah, you want to say something? Yeah.
The thing that I wanted to do there, I wanted just to thank the guys, Nabil, Arun. It's a those who invited me. And I want to say thank you to all of you for being again here to hear you, to be my second motherland. Thank you all.